The coal scam which hit the country in 2012 was one of the biggest scams that had hit India ever in its history. At rupees 1.86 lakh crore, it was the CAG which uncovered this scam. The scam, which has been subsequently probed by the CBI, has seen 19 convictions, including a conviction of the former coal secretary. Today, we are joined by P. Sesh Kumarji, who was the Director General Audit in the CAG. He has come out with a new book detailing various new facets of this mega coal scam which happened, including revealing how the government really did not roll out a red carpet for the CAG when the CAG started probing this scam. Shesh Kumarji, welcome to CNN News 18. And I was reading your book with the great interest. And one point which I read, which made a lot of sense to me and left me quite surprised, that the officials were very cagey. Crucial files went missing or were delayed. What are these crucial files you think which were hidden by the authorities of that time from the CAG, and what impact did it have on the probe?
Amanji, namaskar. The whole audit report, the word scam and all was the attribute of the media. CAG didn't use the word scam. He reported on the allocations, and which were apparently there were no criteria, they were not transparent, there was no equal opportunity, nepotism, patronage, arbitrary, illegal, right up to Supreme Court it went. And ultimately, you are aware, Supreme Court cancelled those 214 allocations, right from 1993. So now coming to CAG's audit difficulties, no auditing institution welcomes anybody to come and find faults with itself. So that is accepted. But then CAG being a constitutional authority, and ministry is a part of government. They cannot just they may delay, they may some way obfuscate, or that may give some records which are innocuous and waste our time, so that we don't have our teams don't have adequate time to analyze the meaty issues. So that is what has happened in this case. See, out of 200 blocks and more than almost 150, 200 screening committee meetings, I think CAG's teams were given access to only about 2 or 3 screening committee meetings. So, and unless the screening committee minutes were examined, analyzed, and the policy file of the coal ministry examined in tandem, CAG could not have woven that story, or rather come out with his report. So there was delay, there was, I can say, non-cooperation, but ultimately with whatever was available, CAG prepared a report and he came up with quite sensational findings.
And sir, quoting from your book, I find this line which says one of the most frustrating hurdles was the denial of access to the screening committee's records. They had almost 40 to 50 meetings, but out of the 200 plus allocations, you could get hold of minutes of only 2 such meetings. So clearly it seemed that the government at that time was looking to hide something from the CAG.
Possibly. We don't know why it happened or how it happened. But the real point there is, if the CAG had examined even 30 screening committee meetings or another 15 meetings, probably the conclusion would have been the same. See, the 2 conclusions of CAG didn't depend on examining the, say, 100% or 80% of the screening committee meetings. The same problem must have occurred in other screening committee minutes also and meetings. So the ministry didn't object. If it was so serious, if it was so clear that other screening committee meetings were very transparent, criteria were there, allotment was very properly done with equal opportunities, no patronage or no nepotism, they would have quoted some other such minutes. No, they didn't quote. So that means 2 or 10 or 50 may not have made much difference ultimately to the conclusions of CAG.
And
That's what I feel.
one of the more shocking things that I found in your report, in your book, sir, that you say the ministry did not exactly roll out the red carpet. In fact, the auditors were given a tiny room next to a stinking toilet in one corner of the building. Some saw it as a deliberate slight. Some even hoped the auditors would be discouraged and take the hint.
Yeah, yeah, that is my interpretation. It happens not only in this audit, in quite a few audits. Audit is not welcome. It only very mature, very open-minded and ethical-minded bureaucrats or public sector heads. They would welcome audit as an aid to their future course of action or some sort of improvement they can bring about. But most of them, they are a little wary of being found fault with. And, it's a nuisance, avoidable nuisance in common parlance. So
But, sir,
that is an occupational hazard for
but
CAGs.
given a small room next to a stinking toilet looks pretty deliberate, sir, isn't it?
That is, I made a little bit of my interpretation there. I understand, yes, that was really what happened there. And the toilets, at that time at least, definitely, they were quite stinking. Now perhaps situation has improved.
But I'm asking you this question, sir, because what it came in the backdrop of no less than the then Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, standing up in Parliament and countering your coal scam report. Ministers, the then coal minister, the then finance minister, coming out and making basically rubbishing the CAG reports of the then UPA government, particularly seemed very upset with your report.
Obviously, they were upset. So they had to defend, and they defended to their best of their abilities using the forums available to them. Actually, CAG's reports, the correct forum to discuss or debate or defend or argue against is the Public Accounts Committee. But the government, in their wisdom, they chose not to take that route and took the Parliament's route and also press conferences, and nobody prevents them, and they gave their side of the story. But ultimately, two things. The Supreme Court is the final arbiter in this case, and they decided two things. One is they cancelled all the 214 allocations. Second, they said even on the problem is with the quantification, because it is ran into 186,000 crores and all that. There also, the basic small point which we miss is CAG has adopted a windfall gain of about 295 rupees per ton of the coal. And that figure, the Supreme Court also has used that figure. When the couple of allocations were already given and the operations had started, though in majority operations had not started, the coal had remained in the ground. In 2 or 3 cases where it happened, the Supreme Court levied a penalty, and by levying the penalty, Supreme Court used that same figure as CAG used, the 295 rupees per ton. So in both counts, though it was an assumption-based extrapolation which CAG did, and it was done upfront, and it can be debated. See, people can argue, can criticize, and can find fault, which many have done. Many senior bureaucrats have done. The former cabinet secretary has done. Former coal secretary has done. So many ministers have done and rubbished the calculation. But that is besides the point. The whole point is, was the process arbitrary? Was there any criteria? Was opportunity given? Was there nepotism, patronage? In fact, Supreme Court itself said these are arbitrarily illegal. So that was the point CAG was driving at. The 186,000 crores is because of the size of the figure, and it was sensational. People concentrated more on that, and media also probably escalated that point more.
Absolutely. And one more line in your book, sir, where you say that the files which were given to you, just 2 out of the 200 plus allocations, it was an absurdly small sample. And even those came with great delay and reluctance from the ministry of that time. So that also speaks a lot. In fact, the key file that you found later, which proved to be the clincher, you say it was perhaps found just by a stroke of luck. The file the key policy file, which showed that the allocations had to be done by an open process but were not being followed.
Yeah, that is the real file without which the CAG report could not have been made. See, there the word windfall gains was the first seen by CAG's audit team. Who used that word windfall gains? CAG didn't invent that word. It was the secretary. Then secretary had written a book also on this entire scam, and he supported CAG's calculations and CAG's approach and CAG's conclusions. Since the coal secretary has used the word windfall gains, I felt, in my book I wrote, that it is a duty of the CAG to see what exactly is the windfall gain, how it can be calculated, computed, how much, what are the assumptions, how can we do that? The coal secretary stopped at using the word windfall gains, but CAG could not have stopped, having noticed it. So he used his own experience and qualifications and assumptions and then scenarios, and then he built up his case upfront, disclosing what all assumptions he made. People can question those assumptions, which people have questioned.
And my last question to you, sir, the one line that you say that we overcame non-cooperation, we navigated around missing files and pieced together enough evidence to make a strong case. Well, that strong case has also been upheld by the trial courts in many cases. There have been 19 convictions in the coal scam cases. Yes, some acquittals, but also convictions of the former coal secretary. Do you think that your investigation was so solid that it has led to these convictions?
No, permit me to say a little differently, phrase this differently. See, CAG is not an investigating agency. It doesn't investigate crimes and produce evidence to prove a crime in a court of law. That is the job of the Central Bureau of Investigation, enforcement agencies, and others who have to really build up that case with supporting other matching evidence and a trail of these criminal conspiracy and all that. That is not the function of the CAG. And some quarters have questioned CAG's report saying people have been acquitted now, CAG is proved wrong. That is the unfortunate part. CAG is never going to criminal areas. He has given his findings on the basis of his assumptions and calculations and findings of the file. Now, thereafter, if there is a criminal angle, it is left to the expert criminal agencies to investigate. There, they may have not come up to the expectations of the criminal jurisprudence or criminal courts to fix the criminal conspiracy and enable the courts to convict those people. So this is our land, law of the land, For that, CAG's report cannot be blamed as being defective or incomplete or they have been vindicated, the convicts.
Well, absolutely,
On.
Well, absolutely, Shesh Kumar ji. Thank you so much for joining us and clearing the air. But I think the report which shows the book of Mr. Shesh Kumar, which now reveals maybe for the first time in great detail the kind of non-cooperation that the CNAG faced when they went into investigating and into finding the faults in the big coal allocations, and finally the report by the CNAG proved to be, proved to be something that has stood the test of time. And finally, the CBI probed the criminal matters and has secured 19 convictions in one of the biggest scams in Indian history. Thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Thank you. Namaskar.